Iranian democracy, Mohammad Mossadeq. When walking through the streets of Tehran in 1882, we will meet a boy who will become one of the most influential leaders of Iran. His name is Mohammad Mossadeq. He was raised in a family of 4 in Ahmedabad, Iran. When Mossadeq was only just 10 years old, his father died. At age 15, in honor of his father, Mossadeq was appointed Chief of Finance of Khorasan. He married Zarah Imami and had 3 daughters and 2 sons. At age 21, Mossadeq was elected to the Iranian parliament by the people of Isfahan. Due to age laws, Mossadeq did not qualify. He studied political science in Tehran, but he decided to continue his education in Paris. However, he noticed that every day he was becoming very weak and fatigued. As a result, he was forced to return to Tehran, where he was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. This disease became a burden to him for the duration of his life, and because of this, he was often seen in his bed or resting. Later, he returned to Europe and studied law at the University of Neuchâtel in Switzerland. Mossadeq first expressed the idea of nationalization to the Iranian parliament mandated Oil Commission on March 8, 1951. On March 20, 1951, Dr. Mossadeq was elected Prime Minister of Iran by an astonishing 90% vote. The dispute between Iran and the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company continued with no end in sight, thus increasing tensions between Iran and Britain. Britain imposed economic sanctions on Iran and told threats of military attacks.
Iran at that time really needed economic reform and economic development, but they had no money. And Britain had total control of the Iranian oil through the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. And Iran wanted the larger share of the oil profit from England to start economic development, but England refused. And that's what the Mossadeq had no choice but nationalized Iranian oil company.
I can completely understand how he would be making that case for nationalization of oil. The country was extremely poor. One can see that cause that was already around in other parts of the third world, that we want our own oil. We do not want these colonial powers. We do not want this huge influence. The only difficulty is, and this was the huge question raised by various powers, but also by the New York Times itself, who has the rights?
In June of 1951, the Iranian government discovered a British-controlled spy network within the country. In response to the British, the Iranian government closed the British consulate. The British government retaliated by flying their ambassador Francis Shepherd back to London. In October of 1951, Mossadeq flew to New York, where he presented a dramatic and successful presentation to the UN Security Council in which he defended Iran's right to nationalize their oil. In the end, the odds came in Iran's favor. This conflict became one of the major legacies left behind by Mossadeq and initiated the modern formation of the relationship between Iran and the US. But a new figure of authority will arise, one that will test Mossadeq, his democratic and nationalist beliefs, and his leadership. One that will be of great value to the US, Britain, and Europe, but one that will be shunned by Persian society. Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi was born on October 22, 1919. He completed primary school in Switzerland and returned to Iran in 1935 to attend Tehran Military School, from which he graduated in 1938. Pahlavi replaced his father on the throne on September 16, 1941. He modified policies of his father and replaced some with new ones. However, control over the government erupted between Mossadeq and Pahlavi. As tensions grew between Reza Shah and Mossadeq, Britain saw an opportunity to release Mossadeq from his power. A coup was organized against Mossadeq. First, British officials convinced United States President Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was very uneducated on the topic, to support them. They then persuaded Reza Shah to aid in this process of overthrowing the first democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran, Mohammad Mossadeq. This operation would place the Shah into complete power over the country, which would allow Britain's use of Persian oil and would provide many more benefits for the Western powers. They called this intense plan Operation Ajax. They filled the country with articles and editorial cartoons denouncing Mossadeq. They hired poor uneducated people to promote the Shah on the streets. They followed this by directing a campaign of bombings by Iranians posing as members of the Communist Party. Operation Ajax was a success, and Mossadeq was overthrown. While Mossadeq was placed under house arrest, the Shah attained full power over the country. Soon after Mossadeq was overthrown, the Shah married Farah Diba in 1959. Persians believed that Iran could be a democratic nation right now if Mossadeq had stayed in power longer. However, others, like the Shah's wife, feel differently.
Beside my own happiness, it was the happiness of the country going forward to development, to modernity, to progress.
He was weak, he was ineffective, is basically what Khomeini was saying. Now, Khomeini also didn't like him because he was a secularist.
But most Persians felt very confident in Mossadeq and still believed that he could have made some major changes to the country.
In Iran, people thought of Mossadeq very highly overall. In fact, it was said by the U.S. ambassador in Iran at the time, in the early 1950s, that he had something like a 95% approval rate.
And this is exactly what his cousin Wazir Shahrokh believes. In this email, Wazir details Mossadeq's great personality and leadership and his major legacy in Persian politics. He says his main goal is to free Iran from the yoke of British imperialism. He also went on to talk about Mossadeq nationalizing oil and sharing a story of Mossadeq in court fighting for nationalization. He said, "My father had an interesting story to tell about what happened in court. Iran and England had designated seats in the court, but when Mossadeq arrived in the court, he sat in the seat which was designated for the British representative. The British representative was agitated and protested the occupation of a seat by Dr. Mossadeq and demanded that he be removed from his seat. When the Chief Justice of the court arrived, he noticed a commotion between Dr. Mossadeq and the British representative. The Chief Justice turned to Mossadeq and asked him why he was occupying the British representative's seat. Mossadeq replied, 'Your Honor, the British representative is so angry and agitated because I have occupied his seat for just a few minutes. Now they know how we feel since they have occupied our country for so many years.' And the whole court fell into silence." This was an exact representation of Mossadeq's leadership. He had the ability to say so much in so little. This also shows his legacy.
His legacy of that Iran is a country that can really develop, can be independent, and they can make their own decision and decide their own fate.
His legacy was not just nationalizing oil, but rather truly setting the basis for the modern relationship between Iran and the U.S.
If we continue his legacy was a true democracy in Iran. And if we continue and if we really establish a democracy in Iran, then there would be a good relation between United States and Iran. Because the United States is a democracy, and always there is good relations between democracies.
People may not enjoy democracy for a long time, but they will rise again. And these sad memories will have served a great purpose.